My wife had an affair with her boss, suggested we open up our marriage, and then had second thoughts when I started seeing someone else. Honestly, I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd need advice from strangers on the internet, but here I am. Megan and I have been together for 12 years, married for 10. We met back in college and were each other's firsts, and for a long time, I thought that made our relationship special, something truly rare and beautiful. Turns out, I might have been the only one who felt that way. A while back, Megan started a new job. At first, she struggled to fit in. She's always been more on the quiet side. But after some encouragement from me, she made friends with a group of women. Some were single, some divorced, and some casually dating, but none were married. I was glad she was making friends at first, but then things started to shift. She began going out more, drinks, parties, or whatever her friends had planned. I noticed the change and tried to talk to her about it, but I didn't want to seem controlling. This new lifestyle began to seep into our relationship, especially in the bedroom. Megan has never been one to initiate intimacy, but now she was either too tired or just plain uninterested. Around the same time, her company got a new manager, and it didn't take long for her and her friends to start raving about him. She'd mention him casually at first, but soon she was bringing him up more often, even pointing out how he'd handle situations that didn't seem work-related. I couldn't ignore her fascination with this guy, so I asked her about it. She brushed me off, saying it was nothing. Then she started asking if I ever regretted not having more experience with other women. I told her no. I meant it, because she's always been enough for me. For a second, I thought I saw sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. Not long after, she started talking about open marriages as a way to spice things up. I was floored. This wasn't the woman I knew. She was never the type to entertain such ideas. I asked if it had anything to do with her manager, but she denied it, saying she felt like she'd missed out and didn't want to lose me. She saw it as a safer option. I warned her that we were playing with fire, but in the end, I caved. Naively, I agreed. We set some ground rules, mainly that we wouldn't bring anyone into our home. For the next year, Megan went on dates, had one-night stands, and, as I should have expected, ended up in a relationship with her manager. Meanwhile, I had a few dates but couldn't bring myself to have a one-night stand. It just felt wrong. Megan would check in to see if I was okay, but she never changed her behavior. Eventually, something shifted in me. The pure, innocent love I'd once felt for her was gone, and it was tearing me apart. Then, I met someone. She was this incredible woman from Taiwan, and talking to her was effortless. She had this sharp wit and a smile that could make you forget the world. One date led to another, and before I knew it, we were intimate. I'd never experienced anything like it. She made me feel wanted in a way I didn't think was possible. At first, Megan found my new relationship amusing, but as the months went by, she began to question it. I reminded her that this whole situation was her idea and pointed out that she was still involved with her manager. She didn't have much to say in response. She just looked like she wanted to speak but held back. Then, her behavior changed. She started coming home early to make dinner and kept the house spotless. She'd drop off lunch at my workplace and began initiating intimacy more than ever before. Under normal circumstances, I would have been thrilled, but given everything that had happened, I could barely go through the motions. When I did, it was just to get it over with. Something inside me had died, and I knew she felt it too. I finally asked her what had brought on this sudden change, and she told me she wanted to show me how much she loves me and how happy she is with me. Couldn't help myself, I laughed. It wasn't the reaction I planned, but it just came out. I asked her about her group of friends, her fling with the manager, and her one-night stands. She didn't say a word. Instead, she went to bed in tears. The next evening, I came home to find her waiting for me. She told me she wanted to close our marriage, saying the whole thing had been a terrible mistake. She admitted she regretted everything and wanted us to focus solely on each other again. I told her I needed her to be honest with me. What had sparked this in the first place? Turns out, it all started with her friends. They had been sharing stories about their escapades, encouraging her to explore, and when her manager came into the picture, he supported that lifestyle too. He told her to live freely, and she took that to heart. It began as an emotional affair, she confessed, but it became physical once we opened the marriage. as if that made it any less hurtful. She described the experience as being like driving drunk in a speeding car, thrilling and intoxicating, but ultimately disastrous. Now, she says, the weight of her choices is too much for her to bear. She realized she never needed to compare what we had to anything else, that what we had was unique and special. But now, she feels like she's destroyed our marriage and any chance of a future together. I told her I wasn't sure I could ever see her as my wife again. That broke her. She collapsed into tears, and I just held her in silence until she cried herself to sleep in my arms on the couch. Since then, she's quit her job, cut off contact with her friends and the manager, and told me she's ready to spend the rest of her life proving her love to me. She said she'd do whatever it takes to earn back the right to be called my wife. But here's the thing. I haven't cut contact with my lover. She makes me feel alive, like I can take on anything. Megan hasn't made me feel that way in a long time. Honestly, I don't know what to do. Part of me wishes I could regain that special connection with Megan, but my lover pulled me out of a dark place when I needed it most. To complicate things further, we have our first marriage counseling session in a few hours. I don't know how it'll go, but I agreed to it because I need clarity. Right now, I'm stuck in limbo, unsure of what's right or what I even want. For context, here are a few details I didn't mention earlier. My lover isn't married, but she knows about my open marriage. My intentions for this marriage are still unclear. I love Megan, but I don't trust her. At the same time, our history keeps me from fully letting go. Counseling is my attempt to find some answers and make a decision with a clear mind. I didn't ask to see Megan's phone at first. I couldn't handle the thought of seeing pictures or messages that would solidify the betrayal in my mind. It was already bad enough imagining it. One more thing happened this morning. After I got out of the shower, I found Megan holding my phone, trembling as she read a message from my lover. She didn't say a word, and neither did I. I just took the phone from her. The message said, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I miss falling asleep and waking up in your arms. I miss starting the day with your kiss." I think that hit her hard. She's been shadowing me all day, even during my jog. She's never jogged with me before, not once in our entire relationship. It's surreal. For what it's worth, I met my lover during one of Megan's dates. I was leaving a bookstore where I'd started spending most of my evenings to escape everything. That night, I saw her being harassed by a short, stocky guy who grabbed her arm and turned her around roughly. Without even thinking, I stepped in. I've done a bit of judo, nothing fancy, but it was enough to restrain him and accidentally dislocate his wrist. It turned out the guy harassing her was someone she had reported for intimacy harassment, and he didn't take kindly to being fired over it. After the incident, she insisted on buying me a coffee as a thank you, and I agreed. At first, when she learned about my open marriage, she hesitated. She made it clear she didn't want to be a homewrecker. But once I explained the full scope of Megan's actions, she decided to throw caution to the wind. Now, thinking back on it, I often joke about the story. It's like I have two different versions to tell the grandkids one day. Either I can say, "I saved your grandmother from a scoundrel and she fell into my arms," or I can tell them, "Your grandmother took a year to experiment with life, and I, like a fool, stood by and was totally fine with it." Update 1. We had our first counseling session, and the therapist seemed good, professional, unbiased, and genuinely interested in helping us. Even though it was only the first session, Megan decided to lay everything out. She admitted that her group of friends made her wonder if she had missed out in life. Being committed to her first boyfriend, me, meant she never had the same kind of experiences these other women bragged about. These women, by the way, are either divorced or casually dating, not married. The therapist pointed out how such influences could harm a marriage because of their entirely different perspectives. Megan agreed and went on to explain that when her new manager started approaching her, some of her friends encouraged her to explore the opportunity, saying it was her chance to discover herself. She confessed that guilt held her back at first, so she didn't do anything physical. But one of her divorced friends suggested an open marriage as a loophole, claiming it could even strengthen a couple's bond. Megan bought into that idea, and, after convincing me to open our marriage, her so-called adventure began. She described it as thrilling and blinding but ultimately empty. It wasn't like the real connection we had built over the years. At first, She told herself it was just an exciting new experience. She said she'd never forgive herself for this, especially because she could see the pain in my eyes and chose to ignore it. She said the reality of her actions didn't fully hit until she noticed the change in me. Initially, she assumed I'd come around, especially since I was going on dates too. But everything shifted when my lover became a regular part of my life. She said I started smiling for no reason. My eyes would light up when I got a text, and I'd leave the room cheerfully to take a call. That's when she began to feel a pit in her stomach. She even had small panic attacks. She turned to her friends for advice, but they brushed it off, saying it was normal for me to react this way during the adventure. The same divorced friend who suggested the open marriage finally told her something that hit hard. It looks like his lover makes him happy. That was the moment Megan realized the gravity of what she had done. The idea that another woman, not her, was the source of my happiness almost made her collapse. She begged her friends for advice on winning me back, but they turned on her, asking why she opened her marriage in the first place if she couldn't handle the consequences. It was then that she saw her friends for what they were, toxic and a danger to our marriage. From that moment, she's been on a mission to win me back, trying to undo the damage by any means necessary. As for me, I didn't share too much in the session, but I did tell the counselor that my lover is still in the picture. The counselor pointed out that no resolution could be reached unless I ended that relationship. She suggested we book another session in a couple of days. The counselor also mentioned that staying with one's first partner for this long is unusual but not impossible, hinting that we could weather this storm. Honestly, I suspect she wants us to be one of her success stories. Edit. When I say my lover makes me feel like a man, here's what I mean. After a tough day, I don't come home to cold indifference. Instead, I'm welcomed with a warm hug and someone who genuinely listens. When my insecurities rear their ugly head, she reassures me that there's nothing I can't handle. And here's the part that might sound a little old-fashioned, maybe even sexist, so I apologize in advance. She lets me feel like the man in the relationship. To her, men and women are different in ways that complement each other. She believes women excel in areas men typically don't, like nurturing and compassion. She's told me it's a Korean saying or proverb, something about a gentle heart being able to calm even a raging volcano. In her view, the bedroom is her domain, a place to keep things exciting, but she never belittles me or encroaches on my independence elsewhere. She genuinely believes men don't need as much as women do, and when those needs are met, a man would slay dragons for his partner. To be clear, she supports equality, equal pay, mutual respect, but not to the extremes you often see these days. Again, maybe this is rooted in her culture, but it's refreshing to me. Edit 2. Like I said, my lover makes me feel like a man. I assume you're in the West, and here's the thing. There aren't many women here who'll happily do this for you. I'm talking about maybe 1% of highly sought-after women, and somehow, I've managed to find one. After dealing with countless women who didn't bring this to the table, I know how rare this is. Now let's shift focus to Megan. She had everything she wanted. A husband who adored her, stability, and a strong relationship. But she let someone from the outside whisper in her ear and convince her she was missing out. That outsider handed her a list of reasons to sideline the one person who loved her unconditionally and encouraged her to open herself up to a man who didn't care about her in the slightest. He just wanted what he could take. Now I have to ask myself, am I becoming like Megan? Am I about to abandon a woman who loves me wholeheartedly for someone I'm clinging to because of shared history? Am I letting go of someone who sees me as her whole world just to chase the memory of who my wife used to be? If I follow Megan's path, I'll end up losing both women. The one who makes me feel alive now and the one I've been married to for years. A woman like my lover, someone who makes a man feel like a man, is rare and in high demand. If I lose her, I'll be right back here, stuck in the same miserable place. Update 2. First, I want to thank everyone who reached out. I'm sorry I can't reply to every single one of you, but your support has meant a lot. Here's where things stand now. It's been a whirlwind, like an episode of Jerry Springer. I've moved into an apartment owned by my brother. He wanted to let me stay rent-free, but I insisted on paying something, even if it's just a token amount. While sorting through everything, I uncovered more about Megan's behavior and some unsettling details about her manager. During our second counseling session, I brought up a question a few people suggested. Was she absolutely sure nothing physical happened before we opened the marriage? At first, she couldn't even look at me. She begged me not to press her, saying if she admitted it, it would destroy us. I pushed anyway. Eventually, she broke down and admitted that while it wasn't technically physical, they had touched themselves in front of each other. Apparently, this guy convinced her that because they didn't actually touch each other, it wasn't really cheating. He called it appreciating each other's beauty. I was floored. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even the counselor seemed shocked, her face frozen in disbelief. Megan completely unraveled after that. She started shaking, hyperventilating, and sobbing uncontrollably. Snot was running from her nose as she apologized over and over. She got on her knees, hugged my legs, and cried, telling me how sorry she was. It was one of the most gut-wrenching moments of my life. Update 2 continued. I asked Megan what changed her perspective on the manager, and her answer floored me. She explained that as she started distancing herself from the group, his behavior toward her shifted. One evening, as she was leaving a meeting, she passed by his office and overheard him talking about her to another male colleague. He said he was shocked at how easy it had been to get her and joked that she was proof you can't trust the quiet ones. When the colleague asked if he actually had feelings for her, his response was brutally cold. She was just a pleasant distraction. He made it clear he had no intention of breaking up with his fiancée, adding that this was simply a way for him to get it out of his system. He even said the only woman who truly understood him was his fiancée, and that he felt bad for me, but, you snooze, you lose. Hearing that crushed her. She realized she had meant nothing to him, just a fling for his amusement, and the weight of her betrayal hit her all at once. She told me she walked out of the office, went straight to the parking lot, and threw up. Her first thoughts, she said, were, "What have I done? And my name. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry." I then asked her the questions that had been haunting me. Did you love him? And when did you stop loving me? Through tears, she looked me dead in the eye and said she never stopped loving me. That only made it worse. She admitted she thought what she felt for him was love, but now sees how foolish she'd been. She said he was just something different, something exciting at the time, but it never compared to what we had. She squeezed my arm, harder than I expected, and said she missed us, the connection we used to have. She even suggested we move away and start fresh, just the two of us, as if none of this had happened. I told her it wouldn't be fair to my lover, and that I needed time away from her to process everything. That set her off. She broke down completely, sobbing so hard she could barely speak, clutching onto me as if I were going to vanish. It took both me and the counselor a long time to calm her down. The counselor eventually convinced her that time apart might help us heal. I wish I could say that was the end of the update, but things got more complicated. As I was packing to leave, Megan received a video call on her laptop. It was one of her former friends, crying hysterically. Apparently, after Megan resigned, this friend and the manager started their own fling. Things took a turn when she had a pregnancy scare, which caused him to show his true colors. He accused her of trying to baby trap him and turned into a completely different person, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. To make things worse, she had a boyfriend she actually saw a future with. The only reason she'd been with the manager was out of curiosity. Apparently, that's a recurring theme with these women. Her boyfriend found out about the affair after discovering an email between her and the manager discussing the potential pregnancy. Naturally, he left her. She reached out to Megan, hoping for advice, thinking my wife had somehow managed to save our marriage. I couldn't take it. I just turned and left, moving into the apartment my brother owns. I've been staying there ever since. Update 3. First off, thank you to everyone who reached out to offer advice, share your own stories, or just lend an ear. It means more than I can say. Quite a bit has happened since my last update. The friend who had the pregnancy scare turned out to actually be pregnant. Sadly, the stress of losing her boyfriend and the humiliation from the affair caused her to miscarry. After that, she completely lost it and went scorched earth on the manager. She exposed him to upper management and his fiancée, blowing up his entire life. Curious, I looked up his fiancée on Facebook. She's the polar opposite of everything you'd expect. From her profile, she seems like the quintessential small-town girl, a special needs teacher, very family-oriented, and a homebody. She's the kind of woman you'd think he'd never want to hurt. Yet, here we are. My first thought when I saw his fiancée's profile was, what the hell is he doing messing around with other women when he has her at home? Honestly, why men like him end up with women like her is one of life's greatest mysteries. Not long after, Megan's former friend reached out to me. She wanted my side of the story because she was gathering evidence against the manager, and she preferred to do it in person. She assured me she'd taken a COVID test, as had I, so I agreed. When I saw her, I could tell she was utterly broken. The dark circles under her eyes and the redness in them made it clear she hadn't been sleeping and was haunted by everything that had happened. She thanked me for meeting with her and immediately apologized for her role in what she called Megan's adventure. She told me she had spoken to my wife again and learned I had moved out. She didn't try to shift blame or make excuses. Instead, she said she wanted to take full responsibility, which was why she insisted on meeting face to face. I thanked her for her honesty, but asked why she was going to such lengths. She explained that losing both her child and the love of her life had fundamentally changed her. She said she couldn't look in the mirror without feeling disgust, and every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was her ex-boyfriend's face the moment he found out about the affair. It seemed like this meeting was a way for her to punish herself. She told me that since workplace relationships like theirs violated company policy, especially given the manager's position of influence, he would likely be fired and possibly blacklisted from the industry altogether. However, she acknowledged that she might face the same consequences and had accepted it. After getting my perspective on things, she apologized again and left. I had to pick up a few things from the house, so I chose a time I thought Megan wouldn't be home. Unfortunately, she was there. What caught me off guard was that she had spread out most of our wedding photos on the coffee table, along with others, and was sitting there staring at them. When she noticed me, I could see she'd been crying. She tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her aside. She offered me lunch, but I told her I wasn't hungry and that I wouldn't be staying long. Before I could grab what I needed, she said she had something to show me. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message from her former manager. It was from a new number since she had blocked his old one. In the message, he berated her, furious because she had helped her former friend expose him to his fiancée and upper management. Megan explained that she got the idea from online advice forums like Chump Lady and Marriage Builders. She thought by exposing the truth, she was taking away its power and giving us a fighting chance. I told her I admired her courage for doing that, but it didn't change anything between us. I also let her know that I'd be stopping marriage counseling, but planned to continue with individual counseling instead. She began to cry softly and said she understood. To be honest, I feel numb. I know I'm supposed to feel either relief that she's taking action or anger that it took this long, but I don't feel much of anything. That's part of why I want to focus on individual counseling. I need to figure out what's going on inside me. On my brother's advice, I've also spoken to a divorce lawyer, just to be prepared. Right now, I'm not sure I want to fight for this marriage anymore, and it seems Megan can sense that. Before I left, she tried to initiate intimacy. When I refused, she snapped. She shouted, asking what my lover gave me that she couldn't. Her voice was so loud I'm sure the neighbors heard her. She said, "Whatever it is you want, I'll do it." I just shook my head and told her, "If you still don't know after everything that's happened, then it's clear where this marriage is headed." And then I left. This is where things stand for now. Once again, thank you all for your advice and support. It's been invaluable through this mess. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel